the next video, we are going to sew all of our parts closed and then we're going to stuff them. So we are going to start off with the elephant ears. So what I've done here, we've got our inside of our ears and the outside of our ears. Remember we talked about the mirror images. So with the right sides facing each other, you will now sew closed your elephant ears, leaving a small opening here in order for you to turn it inside out. Once you've done that, you can use a low iron or some steam just to press it nice and flat, because we are going to use these ears. We are going to be attaching these ears to the elephant head before the final close. So let's move on to the elephant head. So the next thing we are going to do with the elephant head is we are going to be sewing these darts close. Remember to keep the pins in place. Do not remove them. So we are going to be folding these darts to each other, and then we are going to be sewing them close. Okay, so now we have sewn our darts to each other on both sides. What we want to do now is we're going to have to attach these ears on the inside. So as far as possible, try to keep your pins in place because we still need to be sewing on this trace line. So now I'm just going to be opening this one up. So there's my elephant head. So now I'm going to take one ear. This is the back of the elephant head. So this ear needs to be facing inwards. So my inside of the ear will be facing me. We will not be closing this with a little blind stitch or whatever stitch you prefer. When we sew this to the body, we are going to be closing this up in the process as well. So we can maybe just pin that in place so that when we start stitching, it's just going to be so much easier. So what we are aiming for is to have the ear between these two dart lines. You will see there's a little space for it there. So we will just be lining it up. Let's see. So we are going to be attaching it like this so that the ear can flap forward. So you are going to start with this dart. You're going to line up the corner of this ear over there. As soon as you start stitching it, it will be much easier. So just line it up. It is going to be in that space. So we want to start at that corner. This little corner is not going to go all the way over there to that end, but we are just going to make sure that it is in line. So we'll be starting on that side. You can pin it in place there. And as soon as you start stitching, you can just make sure, following the line to that little corner over there, you will see there, it will most probably reach each other. Because we're sewing from that corner to this little corner. So it looks like it's going to be reaching each other. Okay, so as soon as you start stitching, you'll see this will become much easier to manage. You will do exactly the same with the other side. You will line up the corners, this corner with that end, and this little corner will go. Just make sure that you get this. There it is. So from that corner to that corner, you will line it up with the darts, and then you will sew it in place. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so now that we have finished sewing our ears to our elephant head, this is what it will look like. So we've got the corners of the ears, we've aligned with the darts, we've sewn them to each other. So your little elephant ears will be flapping forward. Now the next step for us is to sew this elephant head closed. So we want to make sure that we still get it aligned nice. So this is what these pins would have helped us to make sure that we can still align them easily. Now you should just be careful not to sew your ears. So you can just pin this in place. You will obviously make sure that these two darts overlap each other. We'll just pin that in place over there. So we'll just carry on until our entire elephant head is pinned in place. It does get a bit complicated with the little ears on the inside, but it's nothing that you won't be able to manage. Okay, so now that we are happy that everything is in place, we will now continue to sewing the head closed. So we'll just make sure that this aligns nicely. Maybe just put another pin in there. So when we sew this closed, we will start after this little dart line. We will start and leave about a 4 to 5 centimeter little gap that we will use to turn it inside out and then stuff it. So let's go and sew this closed. Okay, now we have finished sewing this all of this closed with a little opening on that side to make sure that we can turn it out. What we want to be doing now is just to trim off all excess fabric. We want to be trimming these corners and just cutting off excess fabric. Careful not to go too close to your stitching line because we're going to be stuffing this and we don't want to tear our stitching line. So we're just going to cut into this a bit so that it will be nice and flat once we turn it inside out. Especially in these little corners or in these little roundings for the elephant trunk, just want it to be so that will ensure that once we turn it inside out, this fabric will lie flat easier, much easier if we put a little. So now your elephant head is ready to be turned inside out and ready for stuffing as well.